Many neurodivergent folks struggle to feel their body's cues, and this is especially true with hunger cues. It's hard to know what they should feel like. It's hard to notice them when they come up. It's hard to act on them in a timely manner. It's just a huge mess. And so if you have a challenging relationship with food and you have ADHD, AuDHD, other types of neurodivergence, a lot of the advice that's being given on how to repair that relationship with food can feel really inaccessible because a lot of it hinges on listening to your body's cues and judging what you should eat based on that. So basically an intuitive eating approach. And so if this is you, if you are neurodivergent and you really want to have a better, more supportive relationship with food, but hunger cues are just a big black mystery box, then this video is for you. We're going to talk about all of the reasons why it's hard to feel your body's cues as a neurodivergent person, what hunger cues might be more accessible and more actionable, and how we can use those cues effectively to eat in a way that feels supportive and cozy. But real quick before we get started, kicked my tripod. Real quick before we get started, hi, I'm Natalie Fox. I'm a registered dietitian specializing in ADHD, AuDHD, and all flavors of binge eating, emotional eating, impulsive eating, etc. And let's start this discussion off by talking about why hunger cues are just so hard. The first one is just not noticing when they pop up because you are distracted or you are stuck in hyperfocus. In addition, some folks do feel that hunger cue when they are stuck in hyperfocus, but they may intentionally delay acting on that hunger because they don't want to lose the flow or because interruptions are just really painful. Number two, it is not uncommon for neurodivergent folks to actually get those physical sensations, but for their brain to really struggle to interpret those cues as being hunger. They may be picked up as something else. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Reason number three can be burnout. So if you are in burnout or if you have heightened levels of dysregulation, especially if that is prolonged, that can affect the part of the brain that is responsible for body interoception. So what that means is that when you are in burnout, it is harder to feel when you are hungry. It is harder to feel when you are full. It is harder to tell when you're tired. It's harder to tell when you're thirsty. All of those body signals that you may have had normally will become much harder to feel when you are in burnout. Number four, some people actually train themselves out of feeling their hunger cues reliably. If you want to learn more about how and why this happens and what you can do to kind of work on this aspect, then I will link a video about that up here. Number five is that neurodivergent folks may get cravings for food to fulfill needs that are not hunger. In particular, it's not uncommon for folks to be using food as a tool to help them with stimulatory or sensory regulation. And this aspect of neurodivergent brains can make interpreting hunger cues a little tricky because now you have mixed signals. And number six is medication. So if you're taking a stimulant medication like Adderall or Vyvanse, for example, those can have an appetite suppressing effect. It can squash those signals altogether so you don't feel hungry. It can change the foods that feel appealing or actually feel good to eat. And it can also increase the likelihood that you fall into hyperfocus, which will make any cues that do happen harder to feel. There is one caveat to this though, and that is that for some people, being on a stimulant medication can make it easier to feel your hunger cues. And that's specific to people who were using food heavily as a stimulatory tool prior to starting medication. So if you were using food as a source of dopamine to help you with task initiation or to help you get through certain tasks, then the medication is providing that same need. It is providing that stimulation and that dopamine. And so those kinds of food cravings may go down when you start a stimulant medication, which may make true hunger feel easier to recognize. So all of these are super common reasons why your hunger cues may be absent or unreliable. If there are ones I missed, I always want to learn from you guys because you are the experts of your experience. So let me know because I would love to learn from you. So if you find your hunger cues very mysterious, what other cues can you be looking for instead? So classically, when we think about a hunger cue, we are thinking about a physical sensation like hunger growling. But again, for all of these reasons I just listed, neurodivergent people may not experience hunger that way. And in my experience working with folks, there are two really common ways that neurodivergent folks will experience hunger. One is what many of my clients describe as being mouth hunger. And this is more of a psychological desire to eat rather than a physical sensation saying that it's time to eat. And this kind of mouth hunger can represent true hunger, 100%. But it can also be, as I mentioned before, our brain seeking food as a way to meet other needs, emotional needs, stimulatory needs, sensory regulation. There's a whole host of needs that our brain may be turning to food for. And so for this reason, many people find this mouth hunger sensation to be very, very unreliable because sometimes we know we're not hungry, we just ate, but our mouth wants more. The other way that a lot of neurodivergent folks experience hunger is extreme hunger, when you have gone way too long and you are so hungry that you cannot function and you feel like you're going to die, and Yeah. And the reason why you can feel that hunger and not earlier cues of hunger is often because if your brain is trying to sift through a lot of different signals and pieces of information, it's only going to pay attention to very extreme signals because there's just too much to pay attention to. But the problem with this is that oftentimes if you are getting to the point of extreme hunger, you have probably been dysregulated and low function for a while. And you are a lot more likely to eat in a way that doesn't support your goals and doesn't feel mindful and feels more distressing as a result of reaching that level of hunger. So while yes, if you experience this, you should absolutely eat, it is not a hunger cue that is that useful if what you're trying to create is a stable way to support your body. So what are some other more accessible cues that you can look for? The first one can be anxiety or restlessness, or this feeling like time is speeding up and you just have to get one more thing done before some deadline that you don't know and you're like being chased by a bear. That feeling can be hunger. And again, this can be a place where we actually are getting cues of physical hunger, but our brain is not interpreting that as being hunger. Instead, it codes that as discomfort, anxiety, or overstimulation. This can also look like impulsivity, or what I like to call very squirrely behavior, where maybe you're getting through a task and you're starting to feel a little bit spacey and you start making very impulsive decisions, or you start saying, good enough, that's it, we're just going to move on, and not necessarily dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Now, part of this can be more biochemical. So there is research to suggest that when we have not eaten enough, when we are undernourished, that impulsivity goes up. And this is true for neurodivergent and non-neurodivergent people. You can also experience brain fog, reduced focus, low motivation, or low energy. And while sometimes we attribute that to maybe medications wearing off or just ADHD and executive function juice running out, and both of those can be true, it can also just be that we didn't eat enough earlier in the day and our brain has run out of glucose, the glucose and the energy that it needs to function well. And the last one can be grumpiness, impatience, agitation. There's a number of reasons for this, but one of them that's very specific to neurodivergent folks is that if you are having body sensations, but again, your brain is not interpreting them as that, that can lead to overstimulation that can make us more crabby. And one more very common cue that you have not eaten enough, which again, this is true for neurodivergent people or not, is having an increase in cravings for more calorie-dense, hyperpalatable foods in the evening time. And this can happen separate from hunger, right? So sometimes if you are very, very hungry, your brain is going to want to go to those first and shun whatever you made that feels like it's in line with your goals. But it can also show up in, I ate the thing that I planned and now I really need to have a whole lot of chocolate and chips, even though I'm not feeling physical hunger. So all of these things can be cues that you are not eating enough earlier in the day, or that your energy needs are not being met. Now, like experiencing that extreme physical hunger, these are cues that pop up when you probably should have eaten a while ago and you're already starting to see the effects of undernutrition or body signals that have not been addressed. However, these often show up quite a bit before that extreme hunger, so it gives you more of a head start. So when you notice these, having a snack and seeing if that helps can be a really great strategy. But ideally, if our goal is to be more regulated and to nourish ourselves more consistently and to have better cognitive function and emotional regulation, we don't want to be using these reactively. We want to be taking information about when these pop up and try to use that information for proactive nutritional strategies. And specifically what that means is we want to use this information to build an eating schedule that is going to be supportive. We want to make sure that we're giving our brain enough nutrition when it needs it, even if we are not feeling hungry, because we know that those signals are not going to be very reliable. And specifically, this is how it might look like. So if you notice that at 4 o'clock every day, you're having brain fog, you're irritable, you're impatient, you make more work mistakes than usual, and you also notice that you have most of your cravings at the end of the day, that's a really great sign that you need to eat more before that 4 o'clock slump happens. So you might then plan on experimenting with having a bigger breakfast than lunch. Or if you're not having lunch, you might really try to focus on having something for lunch. Or if that feels overwhelming or you are having one, maybe you need another snack in the afternoon. And then you want to try that out in the easiest way possible. I do not want you to optimize what these choices are because if you're already getting to the point every day where you're dysregulated, you probably don't have the spoons to put a lot of thought in having the perfect meal or the perfect snack and then executing the shopping and the prep required to do that. before you do any optimization, we want you to be regulated and regularly nourished. So just have anything that is going to be at all satiating, and then see what happens. See what your energy levels are like. See how your food noise is in the end of the day, and try to use those cues as a way to guide what rhythm works for you. And while eating on a schedule may feel like it is not being in tune with your body because you're not eating when you are feeling hungry, this is actually a really great example of attuned eating because you are using your body's cues, these alternative ones that you might actually notice, to help you figure out what your body needs. So give this a try and let me know how it goes. Now, you may notice that most of these strategies are more focused on actual hunger cues and trying not to get too hungry, and it didn't really focus about what to do if you are eating as a way to meet stimulation needs. So if you're stimming with food, or if you are having a lot of that mouth hunger specifically during the day. So if you'd like to learn more about that and what strategies might be helpful there or how stimming works, let me know in the comment section below because I'm happy to do a video about that. And let me know specifically what questions you have about stimming so I can make sure I cover all the things that you want to hear about. Yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Take care.